Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we have reached the portion of Liberty Nation Radio which we entitle Talkin Liberty. It's when we welcome back in our guardian of individual liberty, LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Tim. Thank you.
You're very welcome, as always. And we start off with a story about the Department of Justice intervening, as you describe it, dramatically, irrationally, and unconstitutionally, increasing the penalty faced by a black woman accused of slapping Jews. Explain this one through for us.
Well, I think it's always important when there are feel-good legislation and prosecutions offered to remember that the rich white guy that they start off with prosecuting, that quickly trickles down, and the victims of over-prosecution, is campaigned against now, by the way, by so many candidates, are often sort of poor black people or, other people that, the sort of champions of the downtrodden would not want to see affected that way. So that's a long introduction, Tim, to go and say, why is this woman being prosecuted as a federal hate crime when she slapped a few people? It's because of the words that she used when she did it. This woman called Tiffany Harris in a Jewish section of Brooklyn called Crown Heights, slapped 3 Jewish women and basically said an unprintable word and insulted them. That was it. She was prosecuted under the state law. The NYPD arrested her and charged her with serious crimes for which she could spend years in prison. But the pile-on comes from the federal government. And the reason for these federal crimes, Tim, was to only redress it when states weren't prosecuting crimes, right? Like what happened to many American blacks in the South is... Right. But so this over-criminalization problem that we have, it's happening right now, and it's happening with laws that, unfortunately, so many on the left want to sort of promulgate, which is these hate crime laws.
I thought it was only white people that were subject to these laws.
Yeah, right. Well, that's exactly the point. They're the ones that are subject to them on the front page of the paper and on the sales brochure for the new criminal penalties. But when the check comes due, it's often not that person who pays the tab.
All right, let's move to the Old Dominion, Virginia. And fortunately, this week we're not going to be talking about how the Democrats who run the state are trying to take away people's guns, but instead about the Virginia Supreme Court blocking searches over speeding.
Well, Tim, this is, I think, a great story for the ruling itself and troubling for the reason how we got here. It's a Virginia Supreme Court case, Tim, whereby a police officer was ruled to have inappropriately searched a driver's handbag who he pulled over for speeding. This officer, Brian Billings from Petersburg, Virginia, pulled over a woman who was flippant to him and totally disrespectful. And how he handled that disrespect was to physically assault her and then conduct an illegal search. But the police department tried to justify the search because they said that commensurate with the speeding charge, somehow he was allowed to go ahead and search her bag. The Supreme Court threw that out and said it's absolutely not acceptable. And, it's always important, Tim, no matter what charge they add to the vehicle code, the police will try to use it as justification for any arrest.
Well, and this is the problem that we've had over time with them seizing property and then keeping the property even though the person who was detained did nothing wrong.
Tim, there were headlines this week out of New York that Prince Andrew declined to cooperate with prosecutors' attempts to interview him on the Epstein matter. And I just thought, the headlines were a bit misleading because really they should say that he declined to help them put him in prison for some crime that he committed related to the Epstein matter.
Okay, next in line. An appeals court rules that California must release police misconduct records. This sure sounds like a good thing.
It is a great thing, Tim. One of the major problems that we have, I think, in the relationship between the police and those who are policed is this secrecy over who are the bad cops and who are the good ones. And it retards getting out the bad ones if we don't know who they are. The people of California voted a law in to make sure that they could have access to these records, but the Department of Justice tried to withhold them anyway. Unfortunately, they're so, they get on these teams, right? This mentality of Team Blue. And, of course, that's part of what the law is reacting against. So the San Francisco Superior Court ruled that they have to comply with the law and they have to release these records. And hopefully that will increase transparency and the resulting, behavior change from police officers when they know that their bad behavior, to the extent that it is documented, will be discoverable.
I would have loved to hear what Kamala Harris, Attorney General of California, would have had to say about this if she was still in the presidential race.
She would abstain, probably, Tim.
Yes.
She'd say that's a state matter. I'm running for federal office.
There you go. That's good.
Yeah.
Are you advising her? Were you advising her campaign? Because
no.
That's probably exactly the advice she would have gotten.
Right.
All right, let's talk Facebook because it's all over the place these days. They just paid a $550 million settlement for breaking an Illinois data protection law. And data protection is an issue that's very current with Facebook users.
The people who keep track of these things say it's the largest payout for a breach of privacy in U.S. history, Tim, which is why I wanted to bring her to the table. The private companies have the capacity to breach our privacy just like the government does in this digital era. And oftentimes, state law is the best place to go for redress of this, not the federal law. Now, I haven't been able to discover yet, Tim, if the $550 million will all go to like 3 lawyers, and their assistants, or if the people who actually were the victims of it will actually get more than like a coupon for some Facebook game. But right. In any case, they have had to pay it out, and it is, I think, $550 million, even for Facebook, is a significant enough disincentive that hopefully they'll modify their behavior.
Well, do we have any reason to believe that this particular settlement will change their behavior? Have they made any statements about how they're going to go overboard with data protection? Because a lot of people are upset about this.
Well, I think more importantly than that, Tim, the stock price took a hit. That was the very latest reporting on this. And if that doesn't motivate them, what else could?
Always the green. Always the green, even on the left. Now, Elizabeth Warren, she wants to make it a crime to give out fake information about voting, which means that telling people that they can vote one place or the hours are different or the locations are different than they really are. So what kind of a crime would it be and what kind of punishment would there be from President Elizabeth Warren?
Well, that's exactly right. The actual, months of penalties aren't disclosed, but the very notion that she wants to criminalize speech because of the type and kind of speech that it is, Tim, runs counter to everything, we hold sacrosanct about the First Amendment. It's because of the content of the speech. It's regulated differently. And, we have a situation right now where Elizabeth Warren has said that Bernie Sanders says that a woman couldn't be president of the United States, and he says that's not true. Now, could she be brought up on criminal charges, as some sort of if you really want to say about false information about an election, well, one of those is false, right? Whether he did say it or not. So I think it's just super scary, and a proper mocking, I guess, is the only thing I can think of for somebody who suggests that federal criminal penalties should be applied to speech because it has to do with and surround an election. What else could the founders have wanted to protect more than free speech about an election? Commercial speech about, toothpaste?
Right.
Absolutely not.
Right. I think people do need to understand, and this is yet another teachable moment about how the First Amendment deals with free speech writ large, but that it's clear in the writings of the framers of the Constitution that political speech was given a platform above all others, that it is the speech that is to be the most protected, even if it's false. And this is why Facebook is trying to, hopefully, will continue to resist the pressure to fact check political ads, because they're under a lot of pressure to do that from the left. Leftists thinking that if they fact check ads, certainly Donald Trump won't be able to get any of his ads up on Facebook.
Because they're going to be the fact checkers, not because they're wrong.
Precisely. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.
This program, Liberty Nation Radio and LibertyNation.com's own podcasts, The Uprising, hosted by Scott, and The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, where past is prologue with Mark Angelides. All of them available on demand at LibertyNation.com and from fine podcast providers everywhere. So that is it for this week, but we'll be back at you next week, same time, same station. Till then, this is Tim Donner saying, stand up for liberty, and we'll see you next time on Liberty Nation Radio.